Hello, Alex here, and as always I want to start the new year off by going over the goals that I set myself for 2024, talking about a couple of new gear purchases for the last little while, and setting myself some goals for 2025. So let's get into it. I know I say this every year, but for me, having clear, discrete goals helps me improve and focus my efforts as a photographer. Obviously, the overall eventual goal is to be a better photographer, but how would you do that? That's what these videos are for me. I pick out specific little things I want to work on or try, and then just pick up a couple of things or try a new couple of things every year, and that adds up over time to me becoming a more well-rounded and more confident photographer. In 2024, I set myself 3 goals, the first of which being to take more portraits of strangers on film. I've said before that photographing your photography friends is a whole different thing because they know what it's like metering, checking critical focus, refining your composition, making sure you're not overexposing slide film. But strangers who would let you take your portrait might not be so patient, so I've been practicing things like pre-visualizing compositions, pre-metering, and just being more direct and confident as best I can. Like I said before, I'm a very awkward person in reality, just to try and get a better feel for this. And I've really pushed myself this year. I keep using the phrase Ribsy style street portraiture because Eric is someone I really look up to. He's really confident and like disarming despite his confidence. You know, he goes up to people, but he never makes them feel like he's coming at them. Someone I really look up to with this kind of thing, and something I've tried to emulate, and I think I've done a pretty good job this year. I've taken a lot more portraits of strangers on film than in all previous years combined. In Ireland, in the UK, on my trip to Germany, and in Canada. And I'm really happy with how this has gone because I don't take rejection so personally anymore if someone doesn't want their picture taken. And, you know, it's not about the content, even just taking a nice portrait of someone for me to have and not putting it online because they asked me not to, and just sending them the portrait and sharing that moment and engaging with people has just been really rewarding in a sense, and I feel a lot better about that. The second thing I wanted to do was just hike more with the 4x5 and get out with it more because I felt I didn't really get good use out of it in 2023, and if I'm not using something I tend to sell it, so I better use it so I don't end up selling it. I did get out with it a good few times this year, not so much hiking, but you know, just generally going out and shooting with it more. I did go out hiking a couple of times, like the time I went aurora hunting with Henry and we saw no aurora, and I missed the other aurora this year. But anyway, I definitely feel like I got more use out of the camera, and I'm still calling that a win because I got some nice landscape pictures, lots of really good stuff on Fuji FP100C that I'm very happy with, and a good bit of black and white and a little bit of color too. No slides this year, but I can kind of live with that. It's all about the spirit of the challenge and not being harsh on myself. You know, it's just motivation rather than a test. So I'm calling this one a win. I went out more with the 4x5. I feel like I'm using it a lot more and I'm a lot more rejuvenated and motivated to actually go out and use the thing. The third thing was to shoot more macro, especially with the Rolleiflex SL66, which has lens reversal and bellows focusing in its arsenal. So it's a really optimized camera for macro photography. And I did quite a bit of macro this year. A bit monotonous, you might say. There's a lot of pictures of flowers. That's the vast majority of what I shoot with macro anyway. But I did it. I took a lot of pictures on film, mostly with the SL66, a lot of macro stuff, and overall, I'm very happy with that. I do feel like I should probably branch out with my macro photography. I used to be a lot more adventurous when I was younger, following tutorials from magazines and the like. This is still one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken, and that was shot with a Nikon D90 and the old Sigma, the bad era Sigma 105mm macro lens, and like, that's the kind of mindset I want to get back into, but we'll see about that for next year maybe. I've done really well this last year and I haven't like succumbed to gas in any major way, but I have fleshed out the kits that I have and bought some accessories to kind of just improve the versatility of the kit I have and help me transport it, which is arguably a lot better. One thing I do want to talk about though is the Fotolander 50mm f1.5 Nocton vintage aspherical MC2. This isn't a Nocton classic lens, so it doesn't have that pre-aspherical kind of glowy look like the 35mm f1.4 Nocton does, but it's a really nice lens. On film, it's fine. It's more than sharp enough, except wide open at minimum focusing distance with really fine grained film. Then you might want to stop down to f2. On digital, f2.8, f2.4 even is much, much better, but for f2, it's more than good enough to use for portraits and the like. I shot a wedding with this lens over the summer as my primary portrait lens. Almost all of the shots where I used it for portraits were at f2, maybe f2.4 if I needed just a bit more depth of field to be sure, because the tech art adapter is a bit iffy sometimes. And it didn't let me down. The clients absolutely loved those pictures. I can't put them in the video, but c'est la vie. I've taken hundreds of pictures with this lens and I'm very, very happy with it. It was a good move for me in terms of balancing size, cost, and performance. It's a nice fast lens, which is what I wanted, especially because I don't have 75mm frame lines in my Zeiss, so I do crop in a little bit sometimes, and I didn't want to lose too much, you know, turn it into like a 75mm f4 kind of equivalent. But it's got a bit of a swirl wide open, but not so much, just a little bit of uncorrected sagittal aberration. The sharpness is good, the rendering is gorgeous, and it pairs really nicely with the 35. I'm in kind of like my diet matte day era with 35 and 50 lately, and it's a pair that I really enjoy. And the lens is just so small and light that I can bring it everywhere all the time. The second thing is the Wandered Provoke 31 liter camera backpack. I really can't put it on screen here, so I'll just go to some B-roll. When we were planning our trip to Canada, I knew that my everyday bag, the Brevity Jumper, which is a bag I love for everyday use, just wasn't going to cut it because I was going to be bringing a lot more gear and we were going to be hiking and probably doing a bit of climbing or scrambling. So when I got this bag, I got it with the accessory pack with the Pro bigger cube insert thing for the maximum number of dividers, and it works really well for me. When we were going around Canada, I had the SL66 with the 80 and 150mm lenses, 2 magazines, light meter, you know, cable release, film, filters, the full X-Pan kit, snacks and water, and a tripod, strapped. And I was climbing over rocks like it was absolutely nothing. I had the opportunity to try one out before I bought it in the smaller 21 liter size, because that's what Kieran uses. That's his orange backpack that I have in so many pictures of him. And he let me borrow it for a couple of weeks before I committed to buying my own. Turned it out that it really worked for me. I opted for the 31 liter size specifically because it holds my larger cameras, like my 4x5, or I was able to carry the 617 camera I recently borrowed. And it's the largest backpack I could find that met my needs, which fits the carry-on dimensions for every airline I ever plan to use, including some of the smaller regional airlines. So there's no risk of it ever going into the camera or the hold on a plane, which was an absolute must for me when I'm traveling. For better and worse, I develop and scan all my own film, so I constantly have a lot of things moving around down here, and that's where I am right now. I have the Veloy 360 setup going, I have a ton of stuff all around the place, and I've got the GFX hanging up here. But something I do want to talk about is the Duo card reader from Freewell. The Freewell Duo card reader is a USB Type-C memory card hub and card transportation solution, with a hard aluminium enclosure that is extremely well built, and tons of integrated storage for a wide range of cards, and an integrated Type-C cable. It also comes with a carabiner and a Type-C to Type-A adapter if you need those. The overall build quality is something I'm very happy with, and for the price, I think the Duo card reader, you know, is a potentially interesting solution for a lot of people. Historically, I've been using this old Low Pro card case and this Transcend card reader, but this thing has a ton of flex. It's gonna fail in the next couple of years, and it's definitely not as well built. Like, you can pinch this with your fingers. And this card reader is just a card reader. It doesn't behave like a hub, and that's one of my favorite things about this Freewell unit. I also use it when I'm traveling with my digital gear, like when I did that wedding in the south of France last summer. I had this thing full of micro SD and SD cards, which was fantastic both for general storage, you know, to not lose them, but also with the strong aluminium enclosure to actually keep them secure, like going through the airport and the like, and make sure I was able to use the carabiner at that point to lock it to the inside of my suitcase, so it definitely didn't get left behind and I wouldn't lose any of the pictures. The only negative thing I have to say about this unit is that the storage is mixed. So because this is the Duo card reader and not the Pro card reader, it doesn't have card slots for CF Express Type A and Type B, but it still has storage for them. Maybe they could introduce a modular system in a different unit down the line. I know that would make it more expensive, but for 50 bucks, with the carabiner and the Type A to C adapter, the integrated USB Type-C cable, the like 85 to 90 megabytes per second transfer speeds I'm getting, and just the security when I'm traveling. Sure, if you want to just use something like this at home, you know, a little tiny card reader probably makes more sense just from a size perspective, but for traveling, I can wholeheartedly recommend it. The last thing I want to talk about is a strange one, the Zeiss Icon Box Tengor. A very bougie luxury box camera. So I had a Kodak Brownie a while ago and I tried putting a couple of rolls of 120 film clipped with nail clippers because I don't have any 620 spools, and that really didn't work well. It's an awful camera, it has no features, and I just didn't enjoy using it. But I liked the idea of a box camera. So when I saw this pop up on Film Cameras UK on their side, on their Instagram, it really caught my attention. It's really well rounded. It's got 3 shutter speeds, 3 different aperture settings, you know, a multiple exposure lock, a cover for the red window, a cable release. Not all of these things are things I'm going to use, but it makes it a more usable, versatile camera than a lot of box cameras. And it's something I'm looking forward to just putting a couple of rolls a year through. And besides, 6:9, not my thing. I hate 3:2 as an aspect ratio, but crop that to 6:8. That is a gorgeous big neg for that simple old lens. And it's actually decently sharp in the center at the narrower apertures. For 2025, I'm going to set myself 2 goals to keep it easy, both of which I really am laser focused on, so I'm really motivated this time. The first is to shoot a whole roll of bulk 500T. I'll talk later about why I chose that specific film, but all the work I've done with Harman Phoenix in the last year has really helped me understand that film at a tremendously intimate level. And I'm not going to do the same kind of development shenanigans that I did with Phoenix with 500T, though I will be playing around with pushing and pulling, I'm sure. It's just that with black and white film, there are a few films where I can visualize in advance what I'm going to get. I know how the film behaves under certain conditions like HP5 or Delta 3200 lately. I'm really learning what to expect from that film. Color film, I don't really have that, and I've gotten that with Phoenix. So I want to try it out with 500T for the next year, really become intimately familiar with how that film works and how it behaves. The second thing is just to push myself to use my longer lenses. This is something Kieran and I spoke about during and after the Canada trip. The two of us just immediately settled on wider angles, giving more context to the scenes, because a rock in Canada is not as interesting as a rock in Ireland. But when you have a rock surrounded by a Canadian mountain, that's a lot more interesting of a scene. And broadly in the last couple of years, my standard focal lengths have broadened and widened as I've become more comfortable with environmental portraiture, getting closer to my subject, giving more context, and not just relying on focusing on a subject and having a blurry background where it's just, oh look, it's a head floating and presumably some trees. But that's gone too far, I find, and even though I do like the results I get with my longer lenses sometimes, or most of the time really, I don't use them a lot and I'm not drawn to using them, so I want to push myself to do that just to give myself more of a chance with them, I guess, for lack of a better word. I have 90mm lenses for the Zeiss and the Hasselblad X-Pan, and I have a 250 which came with the SL66 kit. I didn't want that lens, but it came with the kit, and I should just use them because I have them. I'm going to push myself to focus more on selecting out details, more really intimate headshot or upper body type portraits. Like I said earlier, I've kind of gravitated more towards 35 and 50 or 35 and 75 as my kind of equivalents. That's kind of where I'm lying, and if that's what works for me, so be it. But I have these other lenses, so I want to give them one kind of final shot. If you're like me and you like to set yourself regular goals, or there's just stuff you're looking forward to doing in 2025, let me know in the comments down below, because I'm always excited to hear what other people get up to, what they've achieved in recent years, and it's just a nice discussion to have. Whether it's in the comments down below, in one of the various groups I'm in, let me know what's going on with you. But that's all I have to say for this video to start out the year, so stay safe, and bye-bye for now. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at yashica-mat for new pictures every day. If you liked this video and enjoy what I do on the channel, please consider subscribing or checking out my Patreon, where the tiers start at just €1 per month.